All yours.
All right. Hi, I am Jennifer Bardot. I am a business banker with Enterprise Bank and Trust. And I'm excited to be here with Lisa today. And I appreciate your grace this morning with our technical difficulties during this time. So I'm going to be talking about sales strategies during this virtual age of COVID. And I'd love for this to be interactive. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop me along the way. I don't want to just be a talking head. I'd rather, have it be more conversational. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So some of the points that I'm going to cover this morning is just kind of pointers that you need to make sure you're keeping in mind when you're in a meeting and you're giving a presentation, or you're just meeting someone for the first time virtually, or maintaining those relationships. We're also going to cover key points on how to have meaningful conversations that really maximize the time that you have in front of these folks, even if it is virtually. And making sure that you keep in mind that mindset. It's all about the content that you bring to the conversations, and making sure each of these meetings that you secure virtually are beneficial for you. And then making sure you stay attentive to your agenda with the mission and outcome and kind of what you want to achieve during those meetings. And then a creative way how to sell. And then we're going to talk about how it's really important not to really talk about business, but actually to understand how to build relationships. So. All
Ready?
right. So you guys are probably pros at this by now, since we have a whole year behind our belt with being in this COVID virtual selling. But I'm just going to go over some quick ones with you that I've found to be really useful. So this is kind of the 101 of how to do a virtual meeting the right way. I found that it's really great to make sure that your camera is always on. I think a phone call is important, but when they actually see you, it seems to you seem to connect on a deeper level. So make sure your camera is always turned on. Make sure that your audio is turned on as well, so that they can hear what you're saying, and they're not trying to ad lib, or you're only able to talk through the chat. That makes things a little bit more challenging. So sometimes, like we utilize WebEx, they'll give you two options. If your Wi-Fi isn't strong enough to hold the connection for a video and audio, sometimes you can use your phone to call into the WebEx as an alternative. So you can have your camera on as well as using your phone to have the audio. So there's always different ways to navigate that. Make sure you're arriving to your meetings on time. That's just as important in a virtual meeting as it is when you're meeting in person. I've also found that it's really beneficial if you have the right lighting. So I bought this thing on Amazon, and it was, I think, $15, and it's called a halo light. So you put it in front of your laptop, and just like when you're taking a picture, you want to make sure that the lighting is in front of you, not behind you. So then you get the best lighting, and then you're being more visible and you're able to be seen, because people can see your expressions better. And they're able to just engage when the lighting is right. And then make sure your sound is right. I know I've attended several panels where the experts speaking have great things to say, but you can hardly hear them and it kind of sounds a bit muffled. So make sure that your sound is turned up to the right volume so everybody can listen and engage. Make sure I say this because I have 3 boys. So make sure you're in a quiet place where there isn't a whole lot of background noise. So if you have dogs, or if you have children, or just if you're at a Panera doing a virtual meeting, make sure you find a quiet place so that you can really engage, and it's one-on-one, so they know that you're listening and they're feeling seen and heard. Make sure that your background isn't very cluttered. What I've seen is if your background is cluttered, it's going to take away from you and what you have to say, because people's attention spans are pretty short. So they might get focused on an object that's in the back of your space that looks really interesting. I think it's cool when people have something that's a conversational piece in their background, because that's a great way to start conversations, but make sure it's really minimal with clutter. And then make sure you still look put together. I know in the very beginning of COVID, a lot of people were sporting baseball caps and kind of looking like they walked right out of the gym. But I think it's important to show, how you would appear in person when you're meeting with these folks, because their time matters. And I think it's all about, what you're putting out there that they're going to perceive as being okay. So those are just some of the pointers that I've learned during this time. Has anybody else learned any pointers that I didn't list? Yeah, I would love to hear.
It's not one that you didn't list, but there is someone who attends actually this meeting relatively regularly who has a cluttered background. And I seldom to never hear what they say because I am so focused on, oh my gosh, what's all that stuff, you know? So, and as far as the light is concerned, I've heard several people talk about the halo light that's, you know, $15, $25 the most. When I knew I was going to do breakfast with the expert, I was going to invest in lighting. So I paid like $100, and you know, that's not like earth shattering money, but that light's sitting way over there in the corner because it has done absolutely no good. So anyway, those are my
Sorry.
add to your points.
No, I love that you pointed that out. And I'm the same way, Lisa. I'll have a meeting with someone and they'll have a bookcase and I'm kind of looking at what books that they're reading. So
Yes.
instead of really focusing on what we're talking about. So I get distracted like that too.
Yeah.
So I would just add, in case you heard my duck quack.
I did hear the duck quack.
Mute your phone.
Oh, there's a good idea.
Because I forget. And then, you know, I totally agree with all of this, you know, and doing your best with background noise. I'll also say that people have been remarkably just kind and generous when the dog and the kids come running in the room. And, you know, some of the stuff that it's hard to avoid, but I agree that, you know, you still want to be as professional as you can.
Yes.
So
I
thank
think
you.
that is an excellent point. You have to maintain flexibility because there's so many moments during COVID. I have 3 kids and they're doing virtual learning where I call it the kid bomb because, you know, life just happens. And these are moments where, you know, my son comes running in because he has gotten hit by the fan and his forehead's bleeding. I'm in the middle of a meeting. I will never forget these moments, but you have to remember just to be flexible because there are other things going on within the home. So.
And haven't you found that people are more flexible? Like my cat frequently, you know, makes his way back and forth. And you know, pre-COVID, I would have just been mortified if that had happened. And now it's like, it's my cat. And while I want to be professional, I don't mind so much the kid bomb or the animal bomb.
Yeah, I agree. I think it shows your human side, which is really important. So
Yes, yes.
Yes, it is.
One little background tip that I learned from Nadine Kuba is she has, and I ordered a folding rattan screen from Wayfair.
Oh.
And I set that up behind me, and then I don't have to worry if my studio is perfectly meticulous or whatever. It's just a totally neutral backdrop. And it works for a lot of different settings.
That's
great really idea. Smart because then you could be on the go anywhere and have it ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go into the next slide. And these are just some simple ways to make sure you're really maximizing your time with your prospects, your clients, and your influencers. So, you know, just like when you're having a face-to-face meeting in person, make sure you're asking engaging questions. Asking questions inspires curiosity, which also inspires connection. And then you can uncover opportunities where you can add value and connect. Making sure that you're moving the relationship forward. So, you know, you're thinking about ways that you can benefit the relationship and always have that go-giver mindset. I feel like that's always been something that's just been innate with me, probably because I saw my dad kind of living in that, those same principles and values. But I've always seen that as being a good mindset to have. And you don't have to act any differently that you would in a virtual meeting in comparison that you would in a in-person meeting, because you can still give even if you are from afar. And then make sure you're creating a fan. If you're meeting with someone and you're adding value, make sure you're staying in touch with them, maintaining the relationship, you know, phone calls, texts, emails. I'm even seeing people doing video chats to check in to just see how people are doing. I think right now, I mean, I can speak for myself. This time of isolation has just continued so long. I think a lot are either able to handle it with their support system, but there's many that need support. So I think reaching out and going that extra mile really does a lot, just in staying connected, because then it shows that you value their friendship, you know, them as a client, them as a prospect, and them in your life. So those are just some tips that I always utilize in person as well as in a virtual meeting.
Jennifer, you know, engaging and moving the relationship forward, I have found that I've been in several meetings, and then, I make note of who's there, and I'll reach out to them on LinkedIn because I don't know any other way to reach out.
Yeah.
And sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. Are there other tips that you can provide in trying to make a connection with that person?
So if I've had a meeting with them and I understand kind of what their role is and how I can support them, every conversation that I'm having moving forward, I'm thinking of them in the back of my head, how I can benefit them and when I can make a connection that both parties are going to benefit from. So I think keeping them in the back of your mind when you're meeting more people in your network is really important, because then you know when to make the right connection. I think it's really important to also be authentic in the relationship as well, because if there isn't an opportunity where you can add value from them, what do you bring to the table? I always have that mindset that you have to earn the ask. So if I'm going to be asking for someone to move over business with me, I have better earned it. I've better either made some connections or brought that sort of value to their business or to them as a person. I would say a strategy that I've used to help maintain that relationship is just being really observant. And I think LinkedIn is an amazing tool for that. So if I have met with someone and I'm connected with them on LinkedIn and I see which shared connections that we have on LinkedIn, I can be really strategic in the sense that I can reach out to one of my friends that they're also connected with and say, hey, I just had this great meeting with so-and-so. It was really, how did you get to know them? Or I know they're looking into this area of focus. Is there anything that you can do to help support them? So then that buzz is going around, and then they know that I've kept them top of mind and that I know people in their network. Because what I have seen, and even when you're a little girl and you're selling Girl Scout cookies, it's all about who you know and the connections that your connections have. So if someone can advocate for you rather than you advocating for yourself, I think that's going to bridge that relationship much quicker than it would on a cold call. So that's just some of the things that I've seen that have worked for me.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Ready for the
I know
next
that was
one?
a pretty wordy response.
No.
Jennifer, if I could interject, number one, you are the ace at doing this stuff. I never stop being impressed with how good you are at this. A little tip that somebody shared with me the other day is that when you're on a Zoom and you might want to follow up with multiple people later, she suggested that when you're in gallery view, just grab a quick screenshot of it so you have a documented memory jogger of who was there, what their names are, etc. for follow-up.
That is an excellent point, and I do that pretty much with every meeting. I attended this workshop. It was focused on women from Small Business Monthly, and I think there was over 150 attendees, and these women were the women that I want to know in our community. And I did just that. I took a screenshot, so then when the time would be right, I could connect with them at a later date. But yeah, Nancy, that's an excellent point. Top producing sales professionals always have a call prep plan. So when you're going into a meeting, if it's in person or if it's virtually, just make sure that you have some notes prepared. So you've done your research to know who you're meeting with and who your shared connections are. You've role played so you're more comfortable having those conversations, and you have a list of questions that you plan on asking. I feel like that's really important. So make sure you're staying on the agenda. So then you have a mission of what you want to achieve when you're having those conversations, because people's time is very precious and you're never really sure if you're going to get another meeting with them. So just really make sure that you're maximizing the time that you're connecting, and then they feel seen and heard, like I said before, because you've done your research, you know a little bit about them, but you're also curious and you want to understand how you can help them. So, and then I just said how to make meeting matter, or how to make your meetings matter. I would say make sure you're sharing new things that is just insightful. I think it's really important that if you're able to share a golden nugget that you've learned during this time of COVID, it's really important. Just like, Nancy shared with the taking the picture of the screens. Another thing that I've seen here recently is a lot of people are trying to get away from just the emails and making it more personalized. So they're using a video called Vidyard, which is a free resource. And even Lisa, she talked about this resource called, I think it was Boom Boom, where you can record yourself so people are seeing and hearing you rather than just sending an email. So if you are seeing new things in the market, share that, because that's a great way to add value and connect. Let's see what else. Make sure that you're making time to call prep and make sure you're having those conversations. Just like how I stated earlier, that you're staying engaged or familiarizing yourself with those that you want to maintain the relationships with. And then you have talking points to engage and communicate. So a tip of advice that I like, well, I guess it's not of advice, it's more like a value add. Enterprise just acquired a bank in California, which is really cool because it's going to separate us from other banks because we're going to be one of the top SBA lenders now. So that's something that I can talk about that's happening within my market and my industry that might be appealing to a small business owner who didn't really realize that we handled SBA lending. So that's just an example. But if there's something really awesome happening in your business, share that because people want to know what's going on. So
even after COVID, you all will be SBA lenders and could be helpful to small businesses.
Yes, exactly.
We'll
actually be one of the top 5 in the United States as the SBA lender because of this acquisition in California with Seacoast. So that's an incredible leg up now.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, and then the next slide just talks about some creative ways to do your selling. So, Lisa and I, we started a mastermind. So just get creative with how you want to network and how you want to build, the relationships within your network. Oh, sorry, Lisa, I'm on the next slide.
Sorry.
Oops.
I didn't. I'm having
make
some
sure you're
technical
hosting a
difficulties.
round table event if there's something that you can add value. So you're seen as a thought leader. Because what you have to say, people want to listen and they want to learn from you. Write a book. I'm currently writing a book. It's called Owning Your Grit to Unleash Your Power. And I just think it's a great time to be creative with how you're marketing yourself, your company, and you're connecting with those that are in your network. Make sure you're always giving thanks. If it's an email, a text, a call, even if you're not meeting in person, those thanks and that gratitude means a lot still. And then start a speaker series, get creative. If there's a way for you to have visibility in the market and set yourself apart from your peers, try to do those things. And then I would say, I'm just a big believer in this because I think if people know what you do, they're going to come to you for help if the timing makes sense. I'm not a pushy salesperson. I don't like selling at all. I like connecting. So I would say try not to talk business unless it's really brought up in the conversation. It's more important to understand how you can add value and develop the relationship on a deeper level, because then you can actually help whoever you're having those conversations with. So make sure you're finding time to connect and listen and understand what's going on in their world. And then if the time comes up and they ask what's happening in your business, then you jump in, because if you've met with these folks in the past and they know what you do, they're going to come to you when it makes sense. So you should always be top of mind, even if you're not talking business all the time. So just make sure you're having those conversations. And obviously, if there's changes that are happening within your company or organization, and it's a perfect time to talk about those products and offerings and how they change, or say your pricing has reduced or you've gone about something a little bit differently, of course, share those things, because that's another thing that you can add value within your industry, like I mentioned on the previous slide. And that is about it. So does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like to share that they've learned during this time of COVID and virtual selling?
I have a couple of thoughts. One is that as a career strategist, I coach my clients in terms of how to job interview by Zoom, and there's some selling applications in that if you negotiate up front, that if you lose connection, what's the backup plan? Shall we finish the call by telephone rather than by video? And the other thing, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes in a Zoom meeting, each of us has a delay, and so there may be a 4-second delay. And so if you finish speaking and I jump in and it sounds like I'm not it sounds like I'm interrupting you, you know, you can pay attention to that and then just like take a breath before you make a comment. Because I learned that going to church, because the two speakers going back and forth, one of the speakers would finish, would start talking before the next person was finished. And it was because of that delay phenomenon that Zoom has.
I
I'm
found that
taking
to
a
be
breath
really
before I
challenging as well
start.
with the interrupting. Lisa and I just did it. Yeah. So I find it to be really challenging. So
Yeah.
the pause is really important.
And I guess really kind of raising your hand could be helpful, but I never think of that until I've run over somebody.
Same.
Yeah, it is challenging.
Well, you can come across like you're rude when in fact it's just the delay going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now I'm not going to say anything so I don't run
I
over.
know. Same here. I can't tell you how many times I felt like I was interrupting because I didn't realize that that was a pause, and then they had more to share. So I jumped in because I was excited about what I had to share and listening. And yeah, that's happened quite a bit. So I can relate.
Mhm.
And I don't know that I realized that Zoom had a pause until I heard, people doing the musical things, and they figured it out and said, there's how they actually recorded it. So once again, it was a learning experience.
Right, right.
Yep. And I'd say there's a lot of different ways to have fun with Zoom too. I've attended a trivia night, a bingo, a wine tasting. I did a Zumba class. Yeah, it was just, there's some interesting ways to connect and get creative. I know I'm a part of the Association of Corporate Growth, and I sit on the Women's Diversity Committee, and they did a tour of the St. Louis Symphony. So there's some cool things happening. And I think it's a great time to have that visibility and connect, because people aren't having to drive and they can attend meetings a little bit easier. So just get creative would be my key.
Yes, and I'm wondering if there's any tips for Zoom fatigue.
That's why I did the Zumba.
Oh, there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. There you go.
It's real. I would say it's real. And I think that's where it really comes down to making sure that you're conscientious of yourself and time blocking and trying not to overdo it. Because I'll tell you, I talk with Lisa quite a bit, and I was doing back-to-back Zoom meetings, regularly 5 days a week. And by Sunday, I was just drained, and I never felt like I was ever replenishing myself. So just being mindful of how many you can actually handle in a day, I think is really important. So set those limits and stick to it.
Absolutely. Take a break in between.
Yes. Yeah.
And don't
Thank
you
you.
think that since COVID has gone on and on, people are more aware of that? At first, I felt like, I don't have an excuse. I'm at home. It's not like I don't have a camera all the time. But I think as time has gone by, people are more understanding of, I'm not available 24/7. I don't want to be on a camera 24/7. And I'm not just talking about me. I'm just using me as an example.
Yeah. And sometimes, if you are connecting with a COI and they're comfortable with not having the camera on, and you guys agree that this is a great time for you to go on a walk and do a talk, I mean, that's a great setup too. I do that with one of my friends pretty often as well. We try to do it at least once a month. So Tara Greger, Tara.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I actually, because of social distancing, I actually have a couple of monthly meetings that I truly do go on a walk with somebody.
Good. Yeah.
Were you going to say something, Nancy?
Yeah, I was. I'm real involved in the National Council of Jewish Women, and they have started doing a monthly thing called Coffee Talk in the morning. That's an outside speaker. And one of the speakers was an exercise coach, and she specifically talked about exercises that you can do and sitting postures and everything to minimize the physical drag of being on Zoom calls. All of those coffee talks are posted on their YouTube channel. It's NCJW for National Council of Jewish Women. and then STL for the local one. And if you go to their YouTube channel, all of them are fun, but look for the exercise one because it does specifically focus in on minimizing the physical element of Zoom fatigue. And I apologize for background noise. This is my treadmill time. So
Oh,
I'm multitasking.
Good for you.
here.
yeah, absolutely. And
Well,
Nancy, you said it's ncjwstl.com.
Well, that's the website, but if you want their YouTube channel,
Oh,
you go to YouTube and then type in NCJWSTL
okay.
to pull up all of their videos.
I thought I would share it in chat so anybody wants it.
Oh yeah, thanks. I can't chat and treadmill at the same time. I can barely talk and treadmill, so.
That sounds like an amazing resource. And that's so real. I realized I have to sit in certain chairs when you're sitting so long. You just have to get up and walk around.
And, you were talking about have your camera on. I have also experienced where the person's camera is here and apparently whatever is on Zoom is over there. So you're talking to their ear.
Yes.
So I think being cognizant of that kind of thing is incredibly important because again, you're in a group and you don't want to say, hey, Gertrude, I'm talking to your ear.
That is a very good point. The positioning of the camera definitely matters.
Yes. Or the top of their head.
Yes.
Well, it's right at 8 o'clock. So I want to thank you again, Jennifer, and I apologize that you were having technical difficulties and I hope that you get it straightened out. And I appreciate that you had sent me your slides beforehand. That's terrific that it worked out this way. And thank everybody for coming this morning as well.
Yeah, thank you
thanks
all
for
for
doing this.
joining and listening and having these points of conversation. I love everything that everybody had to share. It was really helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer,
Jennifer.
for doing it.
Thanks,
course.
Jennifer. It was great.
Yeah. Enjoy your
Everybody-
treadmill, Nancy.
I hope everybody has a great day and a great week. And
All
we'll
right.
see you next week.
Take
Okay.
care.
Bye-bye.